Let's bring in global affairs analyst Amuda Mushibodi live for us in Ibadan. Thank you for joining us on The World Now at this time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Israel has once again attacked another hospital in Jordan. And many have argued that this situation, the continuous attack on civilians, is not to be termed genocide. But what's your assessment of the war at this stage?
Well, the quality and the finishing from Newcastle, that's got them the chances. In that first half. For Newcastle in this second half, Manchester City have just controlled it.
The marauder in this instance now. We've seen how Israel has been the one assaulting, being the one on the onslaught against Palestinians in this whole quest to rout, the Hamas, to rout Hamas. But the question of whether these amounts to genocide is incontrovertible as far as I'm concerned. Yes, Israel will argue that they are out there to ensure that they annihilate Hamas. But while you're doing that, there are established international regulations, there are established war ethics, established international humanitarian laws, which have been clearly violated by all actions of Israel in this case. And so nothing else will detract from the fact that this, if not more, amount to genocidal act. So I think one would be right to say that the whole attacks on facilities which one would have expected to be considered sacred in the heat of war like this, hospitals, schools, and a whole lot more, ambulances, are not spared in the attacks by Israel. Now, do we say that all these are still in the quest to eliminate Hamas? Well, that is more like an overkill.
Well, let's also talk about the possibility of even projecting what the future will look like. People in Gaza are losing hope, and people are starting to have difficulties, projecting what they feel the next day will look like. And many have predicted the end to this war. But here we are, and with a series of failed mediations, is anything really predictable at this time?
I think it's becoming more complex. Don't forget that one of the things that is very right now is that some Jews believe that this ought to have been nailed and of course nipped in the bud by Benjamin Netanyahu in his first tenure while he was in power in the early 2000s, but he failed to do that, and now is the best time for them to do that. So they are ready to go for an overreach just to do that. Now, if that is the case, it becomes more complex because you can hardly tell what the possible outcome will be or what is going to be next. Don't forget that this war is now gaining international attention. And not by attention, I mean a lot of other non-state actors are getting involved. The Houthi, the Yemeni Houthi rebels are getting involved in this. We're talking about Hezbollah getting involved. Lebanon is also talking. South Africa has already taken Israel, to the ICC, and a whole lot more. So by the time you see how expanded this issue is becoming, it becomes more difficult to tell what will be the end of it all.
Talking about how expanded this situation is, like I said earlier, the Qatari Prime Minister has said that the situation in the Middle East is a sort of, recipe for escalation everywhere. It might get to a point where they might not be able to, control these people. But then let's get to the Hamas's part. Can you say that the IDF has really weakened Hamas enough to win the war in Gaza? Israel has managed to kill at least 5 battalion commanders in targeted regions, yet none of these units have been rendered.
Okay, issues of complicity of even non-armed civilians in this whole thing. But then, Hamas itself, as a terrorist organization, is leveraging propaganda. And we have seen the series of attacks, attacks on certain leaders of Hamas. And definitely, Israel is having a good hit at them. But that said, we are concerned more because of the civilians, the non-armed persons who are getting caught up in the exchange of fire in this situation. So I think the issue of whether Hamas is strong enough or has been strong enough to withstand IDF is out of place. When you place them, personnel for personnel, arms for arms, definitely IDF would have, an upper hand in this situation.
All right. Finally, Mr. Mosigbodi, I see that you are calling us, talking to us live from Ibadan, and I'm sure you're aware of the explosion that happened yesterday night. Can you talk to us about what the mood is like in Ibadan with the number of, cases that they've seen?
Well, it's a state of apprehension. Don't forget that the country itself is battling with issues of insecurity, and that has heightened the level of apprehension in the city. First, the lateness in the response methodology and response mechanics between when the issue happened around past 7 till around 8 or 9, when first responders were coming on board, created a lot of apprehension in the city. And of course, we are in the age of fake news. You see a lot of people, a lot of theories, conspiracy theories have flown. Some initially it was a bomb blast, or some said no, it wasn't a bomb blast, or it was a gas pipeline explosion, or a gas station explosion. But now it has been established where the event happened. But at the moment, it's just a state of apprehension. People are unsure of what the issue is. And that's why there's been a call on security agencies to expedite action on the investigation of what has actually happened. Yes, there have been claims that it was dynamite that was stored. But given the quantum of the impact that happened there, one must say that must be a large quantum of dynamite.
Mr. Mosigbodi, I'm sure the average person living in Ibadan has a lot to say about this explosion. We are staying on this story, and we have our correspondents live for us to, monitor development. Thank you very much for your time. Well, I have been speaking with Global Affairs Analyst Amuda Mosigbodi. Thank you for joining us at this time.
You're most welcome.